Hello.
Morning.
Morning.
Oh, I feel like I'm tardy. I'm just on time though. Been quite a morning. How are you all today?
Good. How are y'all?
Fabulous. Um, just second here to get my act together. Whew. And welcome. I'm not normally this
Who's on this side?
all over the place, but it's been a morning. Phone ringing like crazy. Okay, well, welcome. Hey, Susan, how are you?
Sorry, I got the phone ringing. Everybody's
I was just saying, it's been a day, right? Whew. And it feels like it just got started.
and I'm sorry, I've got another meeting that I have to provide the Zoom link, the computer and stuff at 1, so I'm gonna have to get off about 10 till.
Oh, sure, sure. And I don't imagine this going a whole lot further than that, if then, because we don't have a lot of folks with us today, which is surprising. I had a couple of people have reached out to me to say they couldn't be here, but they want the recording. So I hope you don't mind, Richard.
Not at
Awesome.
all.
Can we
And
have
it's
this take
Rick. Please don't call me Richard. The only person that ever called me Richard was when my mother was mad at me. So every time I jump a little bit when I hear Richard. Okay, so
Richard?
it's Rick.
Okay.
It's
Well, that's what your Zoom screen says. So I'm not the best at remembering names, as this group can attest. And so, yeah, I would forget everyone's name if it wasn't for their Zoom screen. Oh, good, Camille. I tell you what, Karen, would you be willing to open us in prayer?
Sure.
Thank you. Let's start with a collective deep breath, can we?
Yeah, hold on. Yes. Okay. Ah, let's pray. Loving and creating God, help us all to take a deep breath and to let go of all the things that are on our minds and on our lists for today, so that we might be fully present as we continue to work toward the task that we have been given. We pray that you will be both in our mind and in our hearts as we receive the information from today, so that we may be faithful and true to your will as we continue to be servants of your church. This we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much. Let's, Rick, for Rick's benefit, I think what we should probably do is introduce ourselves and explain to Rick where we're coming from, where we serve Presbytery, basic geography. Rick, I'm Valerie Young. I get to serve these wonderful, fine folks as their Synod executive and stated clerk for the Synod of South Atlantic. Karen, you want to go? Oh, and I live in Jacksonville, Florida, by the way.
Okay. I'm just renaming myself because it all runs together. I'm Karen Nesmith, and I'm representing Tampa Bay Presbytery. I'm retired interim pastor.
Thanks. Tom?
Yes, I'm Tom Sharon. I'm representing New Harmony Presbytery, and from the great city of Florence, South Carolina. So.
Awesome. Camille?
I'm Camille Josie. I live in Marietta, Georgia. I serve a small congregation on the south edge of Rome, Georgia, and I'm here representing the Cherokee Presbytery.
Thanks so much, Camille. Susan.
I'm Susan Henley. I'm the office administrator of Westminster Presbyterian Church, which is also in Rome, but we're on the west side of Rome. I'm just the office administrator.
There's no such thing as just.
That's right. Not in the church, that's for sure. And there are a number of other folks who have been a part of our work together over the last several months. Several from Peace River Presbytery, which is southwestern Florida, and tropical Florida, and St. Augustine, Florida. And so we're pretty well dispersed throughout the geography of Synod of South Atlantic, which is South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Rick, will you, all I know about you is you're the contact person for this New Jersey group. And I think I've watched a Zoom where you talked about the partnership, but other than that, I don't know much about you. So tell us all about you.
My name's Rick Friedl. I currently reside in Ridgewood, New Jersey with my wife, the Reverend Susan Friedl, both retired. Okay. Background, 42 years in the insurance industry, starting off East Carolina graduate, started off in Hickory, North Carolina, Raleigh, Charlotte, Duluth, Georgia. And then we got, Susan ended up going to Yale. And at that point we moved north. And since the kid and the grandkids are here, we are still here. So even though all the family's still in North Carolina. So we put this thing together several years ago when my wife was acting as the interim Presbytery exec for the Presbytery of Palisades in New Jersey, and 25 years ago. So I will be happy to, give you everything and anything I can do to help you all off, because I know this is an extremely difficult period, almost as tough as it was when we first did this 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Rick, I put you on the email that outlined the steps, and
I saw that.
It has all the questions on it that this group had come up with in advance. I simply facilitate this group. And so do y'all want to ask the questions, or Rick, do you just want to address them as
let me give you some history first, then we get into the questions, because it's important to follow what we did and why we've done it. Okay. I think the biggest thing is 25 years ago, there was a crunch on the executive lines. In other words, molestation and abuse. Okay. And it got to the point, and I can't remember if it was before or after the Catholic Church made their big announcement, but needless to say, claims and lawsuits were being filed everywhere. The insurance companies, as expected, ran away. But when they ran away from everything with religious institutions. What we were able to do at that time was decided church by church couldn't afford it or do it on their own. So what I decided to take on at that point, it was, how do we get the buying power of the 4 presbyteries in New Jersey, put a program together that they would have individual policies, be rated as individual risk, but get the buying power of the entire collective and get credit as a whole for the premium paid within the collective. Okay. And it was a dodgy, period, because no one wanted to put up $2 million in molestation and abuse at that point. But when you're holding millions of dollars over somebody, insurance company's head, all of a sudden, instead of paying $35,000 in premiums and you're paying $2.5 million, it's amazing how people snap to. and come together as far as that. Plus, we were running a loss ratio back then of, matter of fact, in 25 years, guys, our loss ratio's only been over 10% twice. And one because we lost a church, and two was two cases of molestation and abuse. But the idea of it is that we were able to put this thing together, allow the churches to have their own coverage, get their own policy, but get the benefit of the buying power of the group. And all 4 presbyteries in New Jersey, where it used to be 6, now it's 4, all participated in that. And it has been a great benefit to more than 50% of the churches in the state of New Jersey participate in our program. So you have a choice to be in and out. You don't have to buy it. You can come in midterm, you can leave if you get a better deal. But right now, the ability for us to be able not only to put a program together that provides coverage, but coverage that is, I'm not going to say mandated. Well, it is. It's mandated minimum coverages set by the 4 presbyteries. Okay, so everyone has to buy the 2 on the general liability, 2 million per occurrence, 4 million in the year. Everyone has to buy a $5 million umbrella. Okay, and then the property, and then the presbyteries buy a 25 million umbrella over top the umbrella. Okay, and I'll explain that in a minute. But what we do is by setting the rules, and we're very fortunate as the Presbyterian Church USA is to have guidelines and rules in being so correct in what we do, because by giving the guidelines and the rules of each presbytery back to Guide 1 and tell them how we're doing it, the training that has to go on, the certification, the background checks for Sunday school teachers and nursery schools, everything that we do and mandate as a Presbyterian church as a whole has actually benefited us, because other denominations don't do what we do corporately, okay? And by us being able to tell them, not only are we abiding by these rules, we're following them and our churches are doing it, it has allowed us to not only give our churches coverage they could not buy individually at any price, but it gives them an affordability factor of it and a profit share arrangement that allows us to continue forward year after year after year after year in a very strong way.
What were the 4 presbyteries?
The 4 presbyteries are the Presbytery of the Northeast, which is up in the northern section, Highlands Presbytery, southern New Jersey, and Coastlands are the 4. There used to be 6. And then when we consolidated a couple of years ago, I guess it was 4 years ago, Presbytery changed some of the structure. And that's when the 4 presbyteries in New Jersey are there. But like I said, it used to be 6 participating. Now it's down to 4 because we just merged.
I served a church in Newton.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't know if they were part of it or not.
Yeah, I do not know if Newton's in it. I know we have out of 360 churches, 350 churches in New Jersey, we have almost 190 in the program that are in this program.
Camille, you had a question?
Yeah, when you say the 4 presbyteries set minimum coverages, is that a collective setting or each individual presbytery?
Each individual presbytery buys 2 million per occurrence, 4 million annual, and a $5 million umbrella, plus the property. Okay, so the idea of it is that, and an umbrella. So basically, and the executive lines. The executive lines are they have to hold their molestation and abuse coverage. They have to buy D&O insurance, directors and officers. They have to buy employment practices for the 2 million. They have, so there's a minimum standard, because a lot of times if you start picking and choosing, someone's going to miss something. And our biggest concern is, and again, after 42 years guys of working basically in the world Fortune 200, 500 range, that was my background. the biggest problem that we have is that in a litigious society in which we live, and you can say this is good or bad, forgetting the politics of it, but in my opinion, it drives me crazy, is that if someone doesn't have enough money, you just go to the next one up. And because we are a participating denomination, and one church reports to the presbytery, presbytery reports to a Senate, Senate to General Assembly, what happens is they just go up the ladder who has the deep pocket. So by setting the standards that everyone has to minimum buy, and then each of the presbyteries then buy an umbrella over that, it's given us the insurance that we're not getting exposed. Our congregations, our directors and officers individually aren't getting exposed to our churches outside a lawsuit that may get out of hand because a jury gets a little crazy. I hate to say it that way, but that unfortunately that's the facts of life.
Sure.
And the collective's been in place for 25 years?
Over 25 years now, when I put this first thing together, 25 years ago, and we've been able to continue to running. It's gotten bigger over the last couple of years because of the property market. But we do have 25 years now of this program being together and being successful.
So the issues in this part of the world are not necessarily related to the molestation, right? We are Hurricane Central.
Yep.
Hurricane Helene impacted over half of the 16 presbyteries in this synod in ways that, I mean, no one ever would have guessed that Northeast Georgia would have been heavily impacted by a hurricane.
Right.
And so there are churches in Florida losing coverage completely. They are not unable to get wind coverage. They're unable to get all kinds of weather-related types of coverage. So just context. Unless you all have other, I'm really interested in, we've spoken to Brown and Brown, and we've spoken to the insurance board. Okay. They both say that, and y'all please correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but what I've heard from both of them is we need to go to each individual church that might want to buy in and get all of their information before they can tell us what they can do for us. And you have to know what a Herculean task that would be.
Yeah, it's not exactly that way. And I know that when I put this together with Brown and Brown years and years ago, okay, Tom is a little bit more, Tom Bender, who I know you talked to, is a little bit more on the regimented side. Morgan's a lot more of the, let's get the ideas up. But let me give you an idea what happens, okay? First thing, all you have to do is really understand how many churches, and you got to, unfortunately, unless the Senate itself wants to put up resources, okay, which I don't think you guys want to do, but you may, okay? Each one of these programs have to be state to state. And the reason for it is the state filings. Each state has their own insurance filings. Florida has a separate one with their wind pool, as you all know. Everyone in Florida, and the wonderful wind pool that I tried to work with them on, that they wouldn't listen to me, and now it's all gone. Then you have South Carolina with its issues, and Georgia there. So what happens is that each state has their own set of guidelines. Once you get past that, and you have the presbyteries then working together as one, the Senate then just simply has the ability to support, okay? It's not what you think it is. It's not as hands-on as y'all think it is. But the biggest thing you'd have to do is three factors. Number one, you determine how many churches are interested in coming in. That's all. It's really a count. Okay, who wants to come in? Number two, and that's by state. Number two, get an idea of where everybody is. And, anybody with an insurance background, including Brown and Brown, I can help you out here. I can look at your portfolio and very quickly tell you what's going on. But the biggest thing you're going to look at is the loss ratio. Okay? You're just going to look at your losses and say, where are losses coming from and what's driving it? And then the third thing is that once you get to that point, yeah, there is an application form to fill out, but the church administrators or the session does it. The clerk of session can do it. It's not that laborious, guys, because all you're doing is you're checking a couple things. Number one, is the church occupied or not? And I'm sure y'all have this the same way that we have it, is that with some smaller churches, they're there on Sunday and maybe one day, a week. That's it. You don't even have sexton or, a custodian there most of the time. Number two is that, do you have nursery school? And they're going to ask you questions, the same thing the presbytery ask. Do you make sure that, that's in our guidelines? Are you doing background checks? Are you doing that? Does the pastor go through molestation training? And, all those things that we do now are going to be the same thing. The only difference is going to ask you, they're going to ask you two questions that are going to be critical. What's the value of your church? Okay. When I was in Atlanta, Peachtree dominated everything in Atlanta. Okay. And when you went, you realized why they dominated. They were so big. But the whole thing comes down to it is that, and they're going to ask you where your losses have been. Now, those two things aside, it's not a difficult process. Most administrators, most church secretaries or the clerk of session has filled these out in about 10 minutes. That's it. The only thing you need to know is really get an idea what the value of your church is and where your loss history is. The rest of it is the same guidelines. You're going to follow through what Presbytery wants. It's not rocket science. So don't get intimidated by that.
But they need to have that information in order to know whether or not and what they might be able to provide. It feels like cart before the horse. Are we then asking those congregations to make a commitment?
No. All you're asking for is who's interested. Okay. And once you get a count of how many churches are interested, then you start realizing, okay, how many churches you have within, say, Georgia?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's just, but you look at it and say if you're similar to us, say if you have 200 churches in the state and 100 want to apply, okay? All those 100 have to do is say, we do this, and this to the Presbytery guidelines. Boom. This is our property value. We've had a loss. If you have any losses, that's all it is to start this ball rolling, because it's not crazy, because you're looking at a bigger pool. You're looking at that. They're not looking and trying to micromanage individual risk here. All they're trying to do is get an idea what the exposure is. That's all. And what type of things. But as long as you're following Presbytery guidelines, even Guide 1 came to us when we put this program with Guide 1 and said, we're the only denomination that follows rules, church by church. I know it's funny, but we do. Let's face it, guys. There's a reason.
So Presbyterian.
It is so Presbyterian. But they were even surprised how many compared to the other denominations that the presbyteries do hold, leverage over the churches to make sure that they are following the guidelines put in place by the presbyteries. And that is a huge, huge factor that takes a lot of burden off our churches as long as they're following the procedures that are set forth by the presbyteries.
Question. And Valerie, maybe you can sort of answer this. I asked Tampa Bay Presbytery, what are the guidelines for the churches? The answer was, we have no guidelines. We only require that they carry insurance. So there were no specifics. So Valerie, does the Synod have any specifics for the Presbytery?
No, we don't have authority.
Okay.
We don't have that kind of authority.
Okay. So
What we did, Karen, was that we had a rep, each exec or clerk. Okay, depends. Some of them had both, some had one or the other. Okay, and another member of the presbytery, someone who usually knows a little bit about insurance. Okay, comes together. We literally met and said, okay, what do we want to do here? What are the minimums? Once we set the minimums, we just told the churches, this is what we're buying. This is what you're going to buy. And this way, it takes away that gap, okay? And give you an idea, umbrella, we're talking everybody has to buy an umbrella for $5 million. The average umbrella cost is $125 per mil. So it's like $600 for a 5 million umbrella, okay? The GL, the general liability, and the executive lines aren't real expensive. Right now, property's driving the majority of it, okay? The only other thing is that comes out is, do you need automobile coverage? And most churches, I would say 99% of churches don't have own automobiles in their fleet unless you have a bus or a van that you drive. And then that's basically, you need some auto coverage in there.
okay, just so I understand, since there's no specific minimum that churches have to have in this presbytery, it would be probably the stated clerk and the treasurer who would make a decision for the coverage on any of the churches that would wanted to participate.
Yes.
Well, the
Okay.
reality of that, the reality of the sort of the logistics of that is they could, if I'm imagining now bringing all of the EPs and one person and or stated clerk and one knowledgeable insurance person together in one room and having them determine what they might need and provide as a presbytery and what the requirements for their churches might be. And then from a logistics point of view, Bill and the insurance guy or whatever would have to take it to the presbytery for approval. It would have to go there. So they don't get to just make it up, but they can negotiate with the other leaders what that would be. And that would essentially be the price for entering into this arrangement statewide.
Right.
So
Like
it would only be for those churches that want to participate.
Right.
It would,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Just
Yeah.
that made sense, but I just wanted to share.
Well,
At
that
first-
whether or not they hold all of the churches to that same standard or not is up to the presbytery.
Yeah,
But
okay.
it would be a requirement for the ones in the program.
But to be a player in the game, these are the minimums.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that I'll give you an idea. We had, before we got more involved, we were finding out that people were canceling their umbrella and their directors and officers. Well, once you cancel your D&O insurance, okay, that means everybody on session, it becomes now personally liable for a decision that may happen that someone deems that is in a business, has financially impacted them or caused a loss or damage to the church. And then, it's the same way with the umbrella. Then all of a sudden, people for $500 were canceling their umbrella. They'd have a loss on the general liability and found out there was no top end. Well, guess where they went, guys? The next step is directly to Presbytery. Okay. Now, Presbytery's paying for a loss they never anticipated ever seeing, but because of the way we're set up, it's a change. So we decided in New Jersey that we're going to do $2 million per occurrence, $4 million as an annual aggregate, and then there's a $5 million umbrella. Everyone has to buy the $2 million or the $1 million of molestation. You can buy $2 million of D&O, $2 million of employee practices. So those were the minimums that were set on every single policy, okay? And then property at replacement, okay? Unless you had extraordinary circumstance that we had to build on some of our churches, especially the old historic ones that we had some problems with. But other than that, the program then came together because you're dealing with the base. Now, some churches chose to buy higher umbrellas, okay? That's fine. But the idea of it is because the presbytery is buying the 25 million, the presbytery buys the 25 million over the churches, that caps their cost. Everything then is consistent. So Guide One or any insurance company can look and say, I have this. I'm not worried about what I have. It's an easier policy to issue. Everybody's in the same boat and they understand what their liability is. Because once an insurance company understands what their liabilities are, they then can rate us on a platform based on profit and not on one church's good qualities or bad qualities, but on the profitability of the whole. And we've probably saved more than 50% on our insurance premiums, and we've gotten coverages that our churches individually would never have been able to afford or buy, even if offered. So it's a win-win all the way around, but there is some administrative things the execs and the clerks have to, or the clerks have to be able to say within their presbyteries, this is our rules, this is what we're going to follow.
And am I hearing you right, Rick, when that the requirements of the D&O, the umbrella, et cetera, is basically offset by the savings, overall savings in premiums that you get by being a part of the collective.
Exactly. Because our biggest problem was that if you look at the churches as a whole, a lot of churches would not even be able to buy half the coverages. I mean, they would just be told no. But because of this, not only do they get coverages they wouldn't be able to buy, they get it at a price that is based on the whole collective, which is probably 50% off what the market is. So it's a good way to do it. But I'm going to tell you, there is, we have some interesting conversations with our churches, and the presbyteries have stepped up and said, okay, you don't have to buy this. You can buy a lesser, but then realizing there's a gap that the presbytery is going to eat if they do it. But the biggest thing is I think we have two churches that are a little bit odd. Other than that, everybody has bought into the program, and especially now that we're looking at a very, very sizable no claims bonus because we're running. Hold on. We're running a nice thing, and the nice part about it is it's on a 2-year rolling average. So this year, at the end of in the third, fourth quarter, if things keep going, we will get probably about 12.5% of our premiums back, and it rolls next year. And it's a rolling 2 years. So if you run it well, you can actually the presbyteries can actually fund themselves with some, positive to take off some of the bad years that you might have. So, like I said, but there is some administration and there's some attention to detail that the presbyteries have to be willing to take on.
And that 2-year rolling average means that you're not carrying the weight of a major claim for
Right.
10 years. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
What does sorry, who was that?
I'm sorry, it's me. My video thing is not working. But I just was wondering, do the churches individually have to pay their portion back to the presbytery for the umbrella policy, or is the presbytery solely responsible for that umbrella policy?
The 25 million that they overtop the individual, the presbytery takes on that themselves.
Okay.
But again, it only
you.
costs us like $110 a mil.
Okay.
So, it's I don't think it's even $3,000 for us to be able to buy that umbrella policy over top all the churches. So it's not, because you figure you have 2, then you have 5, and then, so there has to be a $7 million loss before the 25 comes in. So the idea of it is it's not a whole bunch of money, but it's nice sleep insurance because it also sits over the molestation, the D&O, and the EPLI. So it does help the program overall by giving, it gives air cover, let's put it that way. It gives air cover to not only to the churches, but it gives air cover to the Synod and to GA. So there's a lot of good there that goes on.
Okay, thank you.
So go ahead,
And,
Karen.
and still, just for confirmation, let's say you've got 10 churches that want to participate. Some of them are big and some of them are small. The premium for each one's going to be different. Is that correct?
Each one gets
Mhm.
their own policy. Each one gets
Okay.
underwritten. They have their own concept. The thing about the collective that we've done, and we have looked at buying just like $100 million limit with a 10 million limit per church or something like that. It just doesn't work, because then the presbyteries become administrators and collectors of insurance premiums. And that's not anything that we wanted to do. I don't know if you guys feel differently about that, if y'all want to, be administrators of insurance programs to your churches, but Valerie's shaking her head saying that's not. But the idea of it is that there is a slight cost in there. There's probably about a 5% premium for us having each church get their own policy with their own limit, because all of a sudden now when you add all these limits up, it's a lot bigger than if you just had one program going over all your churches. So there is a little bit more cost in there, but I tell you, it's nice because it gives the churches freedom. If they get a better deal, if the market changes, they can leave the program or they can come in the program midterm. So it gives more flexibility to the churches than just we're providing this, you have to buy it. That's not what we wanted to do in the north, at least in New Jersey when we did that.
No, that wouldn't go over well here either.
Yeah, because I'm also working with New York also, and they're and you can imagine the difference between New York City and the churches around in the communities. It's the same thing, big, little, and new, old, and so they're in the same thing. They're looking at almost identical to what we have, is that everyone gets their own policy, everyone administers, they pay their own premium, but the collective goes under one account.
So you've mentioned administration at the presbytery level. This is assuming that let's say there's a collective of Georgia presbyteries.
Mm-hmm.
Is there administration that has to happen within all 5 of those presbyteries, or is it one presbytery would take that on behalf of the state? And what exactly does that administration look like?
Okay. By default, I am the central focus of the 4 presbyteries in the Northeast. Okay. I am retired. I do it for free. Okay. So there's no cost, even though I keep pushing them to contribute to a part-time risk manager to do this. To give you an idea, we meet 3 times a year. Okay. And we do it by Zoom. One, we try to do it in person, but we meet by Zoom. And what we do is Brown & Brown comes on the call with us, and we basically go over the market, what's happening within the insurance industry, and any problems we're having with the program, both either from the church side, from the presbytery side, or from Brown & Brown side, what we're seeing. Other than that, it's and just getting consensus between the 4 presbyteries. Okay, this is what we want to do. Is everyone okay with what's happening? The Northeast Presbytery, Northeast New Jersey, is kind of the central point, since I was simply the one that put the program together years and years ago, and I work with all 4 presbyteries to make sure everybody's happy and understand what's going on, and act as the liaison to Brown & Brown. So if there's a problem, I'm addressing with Brown & Brown on a technical matter versus a church that someone in a congregation or a presbytery may not understand insurance lingo, and getting upside down with a misinterpretation. So that's how that works. And I know you guys got a lot of great insurance people between the three states, being down there for almost most of my life, which we actually still have a place in Sunset Beach, North Carolina. So we go down there. We spend almost half our time in Sunset Beach.
What other questions do you all have? I'm looking at my list to make sure we've talked about everything.
It sounds like one consideration might be for either by state, the presbyteries consider contributing X amount of dollars to pay for a risk manager to do the paperwork. Or I guess by state it makes more sense
Yes.
than by synod. Is that correct?
Yeah, and what we do is like each presbytery, I ask each presbytery to put up, I think $4,000. Okay, because a lot of retired guys, for $12,000, for $12,500 would be happy to work part time to help with, a couple, for the meetings, for if there's a problem with an inspection, if there's a problem with a claim, just to get involved to help, and and they would be your liaison to be able to drive that. I do it for free, but that's me, because if I did it, all I do is give it back to the government, to the state of New Jersey and Uncle Sam in taxes. So it's easier for me just to contribute my time as part of my stewardship to the church.
Could someone like that help us set it up too?
Yeah, I did it originally, and with Brown and Brown to do it. It's not. It's just getting it off the ground and getting the churches to understand. Would you consider it, and who you are, and get an idea of the property values. That's once you get the location, Valerie. It's really it's so driven by property. Okay, as you guys know, if anybody knows, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, know that wind flood is going to be a big thing. It's going to be driven by your property. Right now, you guys are facing, I know at the beach, frozen pipes everywhere, okay, because of the cold snap that hit North Carolina and up through Virginia. So the idea of it is that it's just really about getting how many churches you want, where they're at, and you can start building it. Because once y'all determine the liability and executive lines, and the executive lines, when I say that, that's your D&O, your molestation, abuse, employee practices, crime, those probably the executive lines, and your casualty, which is your primary general liability, and the umbrella. Once you get that, it's property driven. It's a property driven program.
This is for clarity for me. I should have said this in the outset. I'm insurance ignorant. Okay. So all of this I'm learning all of this. So those executive lines, as I think I've heard you say, are a shared cost at the presbytery level. That's not at the congregational level.
No, those are each in the congregation also buys the executive lines. It's $1 million. It's $1 million per occurrence, $2 million
those
per
are the
year.
things that presbyteries are saying. This is the minimum of what you have to
Right.
do.
And then the 25 million umbrella that the presbyteries buy actually sit over top those executive lines too.
Okay.
So there's a nice cushion there for everybody to make sure that there's protection, so no one's declaring bankruptcy or going through all your funds.
Okay, that's helpful.
And I'm hearing that overall insurance premiums will reduce even with these additional coverages because of the collective action.
Yes. Because everyone's getting a premium credit as it grows. It's there. Like I'll give you one example, and I won't name the church because they literally had they had a loss. Okay, they had the roof collapse over a snow load years ago. The building is actually being propped up with beams on the outside to hold it. And the reason is a historical landmark dating back to 17 something. Okay. They basically were excluded from the property. From the property program. So Brown and Brown had to go out to London and buy everything. And when I saw that they were paying $50,000 for their property insurance alone, okay, and basically not getting any coverage, basically I sat down and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Boom, we came up with a 4-step process and separated some of the things out. We went by and putting them in this program and being creative in how we did it. They went from $50,000 down to $12,000. And it's just being able to take that, because all of a sudden now you got millions behind you, not standing there by yourself. So they were trying to do it on their own. And then when they came in, we were able to create it and put some caveats on it that they didn't get everything everybody else had, but they got some things written into their policies specific, it applies to them, that allowed Guide 1 to come in, and they saved 70% on their insurance premium by just doing that. So that's what it gets you. It allows us to do, some neat things. You guys are going to be a little bit different because y'all are going to have to face the wind factor and what the models look like. Okay. But the idea of it is that a lot of it's going to go back to how new are the roofs. They're going to ask you, they're going to come out, they're going to look how new is the roof, how well do you guys maintain? And, you know, it's a nice thing to know that most of our churches do a really good job. They understand what they're in. I've never met a Florida or coastal resident that doesn't understand. They live on the coast and they're subject to wind. It just, you know, it's just a fact of life. And the idea of it is that it works in a lot of different ways, folks.
Now, you would have been about a third to halfway into your 25 years of this program when the hurricanes went up the New Jersey coast. How did that impact your insurance?
They still talk about Sandy, okay? They still talk about Sandy, and they still talk about, there was another one that flooded New York. I can't remember the one when I came up over the barrier. Coastal does have, you know, the 5% wind deductible, okay? Other than the churches along the coast, and in our program with Guide 1, it's 50 miles in. Okay, so if you're 50 miles in, you have a 5% deductible on your wind. That's been about it. And if you're in a floodplain, you have to apply for federal flood. And those are the two programs. They don't do flood unless you buy federal flood. And if you're within the coastal or within what they consider a wind zone, you have a 5% deductible. And nice part about the presbytery, our presbyteries, each of our presbyteries support the smaller churches that can't afford the 5%. We're using that no claims bonus as kind of a reinsurance buffer to help our smaller, less fortunate churches in that gap between, you know, a big deductible, their 5%, and a smaller one. So there's some things that presbyteries can do to really help their churches in a way that gives benefit to everybody and everything. I consider it's a wonderful way, as our execs talk about, it is wonderful stewardship back to our churches to be able to help them, especially ones that can't take a big deductible, to let them buy that down and the presbytery take the gap between, say, $1,000 and $5,000, that $4,000 gap. The presbyteries can help them with to keep their insurance premiums down while they're, you know, without taking it on the nose. So the presbyteries are actually seen, at least I can tell you in the Northeast, when we present it, our churches actually see the presbytery helping and supporting them, where, you know, how many times, I know y'all have heard, well, what does presbytery do for me? You know, when, you know, they're just taking, they want the per capita, we never hear from them. In this case, we're actually doing a lot for our churches to show them that presbytery is helping, and it's a great way to become in more more conversation with each of our congregations.
Are all the churches in New Jersey a part of this? Or do you have some that are not? And if not, do you still have your umbrella policy to cover those that are not in your group?
Right now we have 350 churches in New Jersey, and 182 are in our program, or 190 are in our program. So we're a little bit over, we're about 55% of the churches are in our program, okay? We do not provide the umbrella for churches in the program, and the reason for it is we don't know what those other churches are. They can come to us and individually we can go into our program, okay? But like, say if you have one church that doesn't buy any umbrella and another church already has 25 million. So unless we know that, it's hard for our program to go over, because we know that we're setting the 2, 4, and the 5 to everybody in our program. So right now, our umbrella covers the 190 churches in our program, and I think there's 5 that we sit over top of individually that have come to us and said, can that be done? But I don't, I do know it's in the program, and there's only just a handful that are outside the program.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Would you be willing, if we put a team together to move forward on this, would you be willing to be a coach, if you will?
Sure. I can't stop doing this. I'm retired, okay. And the thing is that and Susan looks at me all the time and says, because she retired a couple of years ago, and she preaches almost every Sunday, okay. We kind of fuss at each other. We just can't kind of leave it to what it is. But yeah, I also chair finance committee for a presbytery. I do try to keep involved. I do a lot of, and I've stopped doing this, is trial work, where expert witness work in large claims. But I got out of that because that was real work. But this is kind of fun because I know we're helping a lot of people that normally are, don't understand insurance or are struggling with this. So it actually has a benefit to it, which I enjoy.
Rick, have you ever considered anyone other than Brown and Brown?
Yes, we were going to go to bid for Brown and away from Brown and Brown just 2 years ago. The team they put together after Rick Reinhardt retired, and Rick was my original contact, and Rick and I go back like 30 years that I've known Rick. And the team Brown and Brown put together, I was not, I mean, I had a cow over, okay? And Morgan was I've known Morgan for about 10 years now. And he stayed on the program. They brought a couple of people in, and I just told Morgan, you guys are gonna get fired. I'm not happy with anything you're doing, okay? Is Brown and Brown your best choice on what you're looking at between us guys? I wouldn't tell Morgan and Tom this, but no, they're not the biggest. When I was with Wells Fargo, I was practice leader for property and enterprise risk at Wells Fargo, and we were the 3rd largest broker in the world at that point. There's a lot of talent in the Southeast, especially with Marsh and Aon. Willis has some great offices down there too, but those are the big 3. If you're looking at Marsh, Aon, or Willis, Brown and Brown has a religious institution team. The one thing they do understand, though, guys, they understand Presbytery. They understand what we do. We sent them copies. Each presbytery had to send a copy of their administrative guidelines that each of the churches are following, that they keep on file. They make sure they ask questions to the churches to make sure that they're filling out the applications right. So Brown and Brown, even though they may not have the technical side that sometimes I wish they had in the size, the buying clout of Marsh, Willis, or Aon, they have the religious institution knowledge that you would be struggling to find, and the other 3.
Have you ever looked at, and again, insurance ignorant here, so we spoke to the insurance board.
Right.
Have you ever looked at that? It's because my understanding from our conversation with them is that they basically do what we're already talking about, but they're willing to go a little bit deeper with us if we choose to. And they only do churches.
I know
Right? They only do religious institutions.
the thing is that's the problem. When you only do churches, what you're doing is you're not creating a clout by what your firm does to everybody else. Okay, so for us, you have a handful of carriers. You got some mutual companies like Brotherhood. Brotherhood does everything. They won't work with a broker. They do it themselves. You have Philadelphia that's doing it. Gladfelder is still doing churches. Guide One is probably the leading in churches. And then you can put a program together in London or through a structured program to do that. When you're only doing churches, you do not have access to the world market in the same way as an outside broker does that does more than just churches.
So in essence, you're concentrating the risk rather than spreading it.
Right. And you're only dealing with a handful of carriers. So the idea of it is that can you go to the London market? Can you go to the excess and surplus market? There's so many different things you can do when you're a broker, a broad brush broker that has buying clout. Remember, you're looking at buying power and negotiating abilities to a carrier because your firm is putting so much premium with them. Okay? So you get clout. You also want knowledge. So you want clout and knowledge. The one thing Brown and Brown does, they're big. I think they're number 5 in the country. Okay? But the thing that Brown and Brown brings is knowledge. And that knowledge to be able to talk church to our individual congregations, to the presbytery, and then bring that to the market is the reason we stayed with them. Like I said, I was going to fire them because they just weren't. I didn't think they were doing a good job for us from a placement side. But we got Tom and Morgan and a team together now that seems to be doing much, much, much better, especially with how they're approaching our churches. But the knowledge and the ability to talk our language and put it in forms that can go into the marketplace has been valuable to us in how they're doing it.
It sounds to me also, as we're considering this, that having someone in each state that can help each of the presbyteries in the state, somebody like you, it gives oversight.
Yes.
That you don't get otherwise.
Because each state is separate. South Carolina has completely different rules, especially when it comes to, I'll give you an example, like when it comes to auto. So I know a lot of churches compared to us in the Northeast, a lot of churches have buses and vans, okay, that y'all own. When you're dealing with auto, you're dealing with a whole different Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. There's nothing similar when it comes to auto on those. And especially when you're dealing with wind and the wind pulls, those are the two big ones that, you really have to be careful with. And each of them, because the churches buy workers' comp a little bit differently, worker comp rules all apply differently in each state also. But yes, having someone, a liaison from the state representing the presbyteries up there that can communicate back with the execs and the clerks is valuable in how this works and why it works well.
I just want to share something. It's not really a question, but maybe it is. About 10 years ago, and I don't know which hurricanes were coming through at that time, but we had a period where we had a bunch of them all at once. And there was a lot of the churches were carrying citizens insurance, and they left the state.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversations that we're having were, if we had a big batch of them and the insurance company went belly up, nobody'd get any money.
It doesn't work that way, okay, because of the ratings. Okay, it's the ratings. You have to, if you're going to practice, all the companies have reserves put up. Okay, everyone does what they need to do. So it doesn't matter if you're Philadelphia, Gladfelder, Brotherhood, Guide One, they have reserves that are very large. I mean, when Maria went through Puerto Rico, there were companies that lost 5-6 times their annual writings in one storm, and they paid them and kept on going. So their reserves, everyone has back. You pull out of the state, doesn't mean the company's gone bankrupt. That means they're not willing to write the risk anymore, but they still have money to pay for the loss. That's the way the states are, and what you have to file financially in each state with the insurance commission is all the companies are very viable and have the reserves to take any of the liability that they have written in that state. You don't have to worry about that.
Okay, well, when one leaves the state, it kind of leaves a lot of
Yes.
churches a little.
A lot, yeah. Well, that's what happened we had Mercer, which used to be U.S. Fire. Okay, they decided, even though we ran a 21-year loss ratio with those guys of 15%. Think about that. 21 years at 15%. And they just decided they're out of the religious institution business. We were great risk for them. They made millions on us, but they just couldn't handle religious institutions anymore. So they just dropped us. That forced us into Philadelphia. That lasted a couple of years. Now we're with Guide One, and Guide One seems to be the right partner for us.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Rick while we have him? Tom? Okay.
I know this is a lot of information, guys. But I looked at your questions ahead of time and your notes that you had before. I just wanted to make sure I got everything covered that y'all had in the.
This has been very helpful.
This has been really, really helpful. Now I can envision steps to actually try and work towards making something happen. Yeah, I'm grateful for that. And yes, I'm sure I have zero doubt that you will be hearing from us again. You just remember, you volunteered.
Listen, like I said, I am happy to do it. It's part of my stewardship that I consider, and we've been, it's easier to do this than trying to go out and I work at a golf course part-time. So it's, that's my little, keep my wine cellar stocked and for us to go out to dinner. Okay. That's what that does. But the idea of it is, this is part of my stewardship to my gift back to the church.
Well, we are grateful for sure. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
All right, y'all. Okay. And Rick, you don't have to stick around for this part, but I do want to try and schedule, at least with us, another time for us to meet and debrief.
And again, let me know. I'll be happy to help you out, or coach, whatever y'all need. If you need more information, don't hesitate. Let me give you my cell phone number so you guys have it. If anyone wants to call me individually on that, it's 201.
I'm going to put it in the chat as you type, as you talk. So go ahead. 201-414-1210. And if anyone has an individual question, if anybody wants to, just please don't. I'll be happy to help or talk to y'all if and help you any way I can. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so
guys.
much.
Thank you so much. Y'all take care.
Have a blessed day.
Okay. Take you. Bye bye. Okay, how do I get this? There we go.
That was a lot, and that was really, really helpful. I don't know about you, but I think it was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can envision trying to gather each of the state leaders, and first of all, asking them if they're interested, right? And then if they are, having that conversation about minimums for congregations, and then what their piece would be. That I think would have to involve getting Rick in there to help interpret.
And Valerie, if as soon as you get the video recording back from Zoom, if you will send it to me, I'll try to put a framework together based on Rick's conversation that said,
I will do that today.
Yeah, so that when you, I mean, what, the end of this week or next week, you're with the all the states, no, I guess it's all the Georgia presbyteries that are
Just the
gathered.
Georgia presbyteries,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's
yeah.
going to be a very busy thing, and we're not.
That's not a part of what your conversation is there. Yeah. So, but anyway, I think you're right. What he did, I think, was help us envision a framework for moving forward. I had not yet. I mean, there were so many disparate pieces in the previous conversations that I didn't quite see it.
Yeah, I couldn't see it happening, but I can envision the steps that it will take.
Yeah.
Whether or not we'll actually get there, I don't know.
Right. But I think the steps are actually simpler than I had thought they would be.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I am concerned about the bandwidth of our presbytery leadership. Our presbyteries are getting, the staffing is getting smaller and smaller. And that means that their responsibilities as leadership are, they're getting fuller and fuller. And whether or not they would have the bandwidth to take this on, I'm really concerned about.
But that would be, that's looking at somebody who could manage for each state takes that bandwidth off.
Right.
And if we were to work together as a synod, although if we're working by state, that's less feasible for getting somebody. You need somebody within each state. So
you would need someone within each state. It doesn't necessarily preclude the synod from assisting in those efforts in each of the states. But I don't know yet what that might look like.
Yeah.
And that again, I think would depend on the number of presbyteries that actually opt in to that program, right? Because I can imagine that there would be presbyteries in a particular state that don't want to be a part of it, right? Or whatever.
Now, is there anybody at the PDA that might help us with a kind of a big picture of what they're seeing when they go in after disasters?
It'd be a good resource on any task force. The other thing, anything that's financial, and all of this is new language. When I'm thinking it really at the ground level, when we're trying to sell this, if you want to put it in those terms, I think what would be helpful would be to have a chart, guide 1, Brown and Brown, over here is New Jersey or whatever, so people can understand who's the big daddy of them all and who am I dealing with. And I'm a visual person, and I think if we had worked on some kind of a chart, it would be helpful.
We would need one of those in the end. I mean, certainly after the conversation with presbytery leaders.
Yeah, and we're going to have a glossary for them.
Yes.
Oh, that's true. That's very true. Okay.
This was helpful, hearing some of the same things that we heard from Brown and Brown, but hearing it maybe with a little different presentation of it helped me a lot to understand really what they were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, they talk generalities based on the industry wide. What Rick was able to help us do is bring it down to the ground for our specific needs.
Yeah.
In less of a car salesman
type
of delivery.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which helped me to clue in better.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to stop us right here.